Welcome back to Dev Dive episode 22. As always, I'm your host, Nighthawk. We're back from our hiatus with special guest Gene. Gene is Senior Developer Relations at Riot Games, and tonight we'll be covering what that means and why his work at Riot is important. Thanks for joining me on our return show, Gene. I'm really excited to pick your brain on this topic.
For sure. I always love doing talks and kind of spreading the gospel of like what I do, because what I do at Riot is really not something that's caught on yet at most game companies, but we're seeing it expand pretty rapidly in the past year and for the future years as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Before we start for real, I want to give a little update on my co-host Larry. As many of you know, Larry recently left Riot Games for a position at Phoenix Labs. It's the studio that makes Dauntless. Larry's wife, who also was on the podcast actually a few episodes ago, works at Phoenix Labs as well. So they'll be working together. He'll be pretty busy because he's moving to Canada for the next few months, so he might not be able to come on the show as a co-host for a while. I'll probably be solo hosting until he's ready to come back on. So if you're missing Larry, he wants to be on the show, but he's pretty busy with moving into another country. So we'll be there. We'll be back as soon as possible. But with that out of the way, let's start the episode. So, Senior Developer Relations, that's a pretty fancy title. Why don't we start off with talking a bit more about your career at Riot? Like, how did you get started in this field in game dev?
So I was doing basically my same job, but I was working in the cryptography defense contracting industry. I was working at a company called Ionic Security for about 2.5-3 years, and we built encryption software that was used by the biggest banks in the world, DARPA, various other things out there. And I ran developer relations there. And that meant, hey, how do I make it easy for developers to build things around this encryption software? Or how do I make it so that the developers can be a monetized way for the company to make money based on like how many times, like every time they encrypt or decrypt, or they pull their key or storage and stuff like that. And so I managed this big ecosystem. It was mostly companies in the the government sector. And then Riot came headhunting, and they're like, "Hey, you seem like you know what you're doing. Would you like to do the same job but over in gaming?" And I was like, "When do I sign?" It was a little more complex. I was very concerned about it because I was going from a very serious, like everybody wears suits and ties and everything industry, where you frequently have to deal with like generals or military personnel in full uniform, to moving towards gaming where everybody is wearing a t-shirt, a hoodie, a denim jacket. I'm doing all three right now. And so I was very, very concerned about doing that. But at the same time, I was like, hey, if I work here, my work doesn't actually possibly kill people. Or work on systems that would eventually, or like support military. And so my conscience can be a lot more clear, and I can do things that are a lot more fun, honestly. And it's just and I was also like, when we joined Riot, I don't know if Larry has covered this. You're given like a few skins, like you can pick to unlock on your account, and most people pick the ones that were from the beta or from buying the collector's edition. I actually had those because I bought the beta and everything in that. So like when League made a ton of sense to me, and Riot made a ton of sense, and so they came talking, but it was like a 6-month process from like them originally being like in December, hey, do you want to work with us? And me being like, yeah, maybe. And going through the interview process, me getting cold feet, and then them being like, you sure? And then I started in August. So it was a long process to convince me to come over. It also helped that I had to convince my fiance to come to be like, we're going to move from the East Coast, where both of us have always lived, and move to Los Angeles in California, where we know 0 people. The nice thing is Riot was very, very supportive of that process, and like they flew me out twice, they flew her out once. We were able to look at houses, we were looking at apartments, figure out the area, and realize that like this was actually a really cool place that we could be out here. And like when I first started at Riot, I was the first person who showed up to orientation wearing a button up and slacks and a belt, like tucked into a belt, with khaki pants, wearing like loafers, and I think I may have worn a tie. I immediately took the tie off, but like you can even see it in the photo that you used, like my profile photo. That's me the day that I started at Riot. Like shaved, no facial hair, like hair put together more, like button up as much as possible. And even that was like super, like I feel weird. And then I came in and everybody was wearing a hoodie. I was like, oh, I really need to reevaluate what my wardrobe is out here and doing things. But honestly, like with my job and working in game dev, there hasn't been a huge amount of difference. Um, I still work with APIs. I still work with teams around companies, and to develop things with a focus on third parties. I still do contracts. I still do BD. I still do marketing. I still help startups like go from I have an idea to I'm executing and helping millions of people. But I just get to do it in a way more creative and passionate thing. Like I think it was a 2 or 3 weeks after I started was PAX, 2017. Or maybe it's 2016. But the Riot flew me because they're like, Gene, we need to indoctrinate you into gaming culture as much as possible. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And they sent me alone to PAX and I knew absolutely nobody there. And with it, and I made some great friends that I now I really cherish everybody I met there, and they've been very helpful in like still getting me into the gaming industry. But within, I think, 4 hours of being there, someone had come up to me, found out I worked at Riot, and broke down crying in front of me because they had met their wife playing League of Legends and
Oh,
then had two children, and got married and had two children named after League characters.
oh no.
And I was like, I didn't have my heart in my heart to tell them, hey, I started literally 4 weeks ago, and I don't work on any of the games proper.
Oh,
I work on every single game. That means R&D, third party games, so like everything like that, and first party games to support those. So I do work on them, but I don't make balance decisions or like anything like that. I just make sure that we are able to build stuff that is scalable internationally.
yeah. That's really big. That's really
Yeah.
important. Um,
Yeah.
so I have a few things I wanted to circle back to on that, but real quickly, do you remember what the names they used for their kids were?
It was Garen. I knew that one for sure because that one, the room I was interviewed at Riot was Garen, and I was really excited because that was my OG champion, and so I was like, so I remembered that one, and I think the other one might have been Lulu.
Lulu's not
Um,
too bad.
yeah, yeah,
That's pretty
yeah,
funny. That's awesome.
yeah.
I know a lot of people who name their pets after League of Legends characters, but that might be the first time I've ever heard of anyone naming their kids
My
after them.
my cat is named Poppy. Yeah,
Poppy. Ooh, that's a good one.
yeah,
Usually it's
yeah.
like Ari or Rengar or
No,
something like
she
that.
she likes to do a lot of pop, and so I was like, yeah, Poppy works. It's dual name.
She has a
Yeah.
steadfast presence. Uh,
No, she does not. Yeah.
shoot. Okay. The other thing I wanted to rotate back on is I think um, when Larry started, because Larry has actually or was actually at Riot for a long time. I think 6 or 7 years
Yeah.
now. Is when he left. And I think when he first started, they actually allowed you fully unlocked accounts, sort of like how
Mhm.
the league partner accounts are today, where they just have
Yeah.
access to all the skins and stuff. And Riot, from my understanding, this is secondhand information. Uh, they came to Rioters and they're like, "Hey, we're going to change things. We're actually going to have to take these unlocked accounts away. We're gonna have to, because we want to make you feel more like players do. And if you're getting everything for free, then it's really not the same experience. And I think that was something that he's always been a little sad about because he lost a lot of the
See,
fun
I
stuff he had
came in
access to.
after that, and it's called play like a player. It's how we
Mhm.
do everything. It's not just that, but it's also like, hey, if someone will come and try and back channel to me through Slack or email, being like, hey, I want an API key so I can do this thing. I'll be like, cool. Is it for Riot work? And they're like, no, it's personal. I'm like, cool. Go
Uh,
outside of the company, apply like a normal person. I'm not. You like everybody like needs to follow the same procedure. Otherwise, it just gets insane because
mhm.
people would back channel and stuff. But I came in after that, and I actually really love it because there is like sure it sounds like Riot doesn't give us anything. We also get, I believe, like 3,500 RP per month, and stuff like that, and that builds up real quick. I'm more of a
Mhm.
TFT guy than League guy anymore, so that's plenty for me to buy the battle pass and all the eggs that I need. Um, uh, but and then there's also like Valorant and Legend of Terra, and so we get all this currency and it builds up. So it's like everybody who's been there a long time, you're able to buy everything, but you do have to think about what you're spending on. Are you going to spend on KDA coming out, or are you going to have to spend on like one of the big events, like the what was it, Spirit Blossom this summer,
Mhm.
and start to think about those. And that's the same psychological like feeling that players have, where it's like I don't want to spend all my money on this one because I know that Worlds is coming up or whatever. And so that we can start thinking about that, especially when we're building strategy and systems and marketing. It's like we have to realize that there is like a lifetime value and a yearly value that someone, or a monthly value, and how much are you willing to put in there? And so I've been a fan of it. When I first came in, I was like, this is terrible. We should get everything for free. And now that like it's been years, I'm like, I literally have too much RP. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And,
I think,
and the nice thing is I can write off RP as a work expense if I really want to.
it's a tax or tax.
Yeah, yeah. Anything gaming for me is a tax expense. It's research.
I need to actually go and do that because I bought a lot of stuff for working from home, and
Yeah,
I'm usually just really really lazy with my tax returns. But I think this year I might actually put some effort into it and be like, I
yeah,
got receipts. Come on, Mr. Government,
yeah.
give me some
Yeah,
money
yeah.
back.
Write it all off. It is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Circling back to the document, the awesome talking points doc that we have written out. What is I know you said you do like a ton of different stuff at Riot. If it's possible to quantify like what a daily cycle is for you, like what do you do in a day? Can you give us that?
I'll do. There are different types of days, but but I can do this for sure. I try to set up a day as being one specific thing so that I avoid context switching because that will kill my productivity as much as possible. So like there are certain days which are like right now because we're end of we're in Q4, we're moving into next year, and we're doing planning. This is all about planning, organization, like scheduling systems for the future. Like how am I building out, like what are my proposals, my pitch decks, my things like that. So I spend very very significant amount of time building out pitch decks for new products. There's also like working with, because I sit on a team that is separate from all the games. We're like making sure that I have communication lines and I'm tracking all of the Jira tickets and systems in place that all of these games are doing, and like knowing what their timelines are as well. So it's like for like I'll like, for example, if game A is going to be like, I'm watching through Jira tickets and they're planning, and or I've talked to their product manager and been like, oh yeah, you guys are going to do like tournaments, like it's something that you're really really passionate about and you want to do that. I was like, okay, well how can I make sure that I build in like tournament support, or I need more API scale, or I need something like that. Or it's like, match history is coming for this game. Okay, well then I need to build up plans for, well, how are we going to do the actual like distribution of match history to developers? Like, what is the criteria we're looking for? What is the goals of this team for a third party company? How many players per like 10 in a game do we expect for these to be used? Is this replacing features that the game like, instead of doing it in the game, we're giving it to third parties to replace, things like that. Where like there's a real focus on like, we want 9 out of those 10 players to know that this exists, versus having it being done like doing it ourselves, because it'd be bad if it was only like, hey, only half of them know, you can go look at match history somewhere else. So a lot of that. And then there is a lot of like support. I do a lot of support for, and this very much scales because like the ecosystem and the community that I run is everything from a high school student who is trying to learn to code and using the Riot API to prove to their parents that it's not just a video game, it's something that I'm learning. To like college students all over the world who are doing college like thesis statements or like various things around how do I do data. It's really cool. I'll get like Korea, Brazil, Australia, all these different these students being like, they're like, I'm a student in this school in Korea, I'd love to be able to do something for this project. And I'm like, yes, let's support you, let's help you. And then like programs like NC State, which has Doran's Lab, and this is that their data science program out of there is purely based on the League of Legends API, where they've built out these amazing like 538 style detail things for League of Legends, for movement, for how do you do things, ARAM pick rates, everything. It's fascinating. Moving into like smaller startups, then bigger startups, then like the startups that are like making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and then Fortune 500 companies. So I have like this huge gamut of people that I'm helping with and doing various things. And so support can mean different things for all of them. Some of it's like, hey, how do I get a key so I can do stuff? But some of it is, hey, I don't know how to market. And like an example is like, we'll sometimes have people who have this great idea, like a truly, and I believe, revolutionary idea, and they can build it, but they have no idea how to acquire users, how to acquire people who are going to do use that thing. And so I'll work with them, maybe get them in touch with like some people who do influencer management, or talk to them about growth hacking, that type of stuff, and help them get to that. Or we'll have like a company that's like, I'm getting solid 500,000 like users a day or week or whatever, but if I get a million, I'm profitable. How do I go from like this? Because like that's where like the profit margin and the cost per click for ads and everything will start jumping. And they're working with them to be like, I analyze what's working, what's not working, figure out where they could possibly find infrastructure savings, maybe find like direct them to various like scholarship programs or grants that various companies do, like Google, Amazon, etc. have like, they'll give out like 10, 20, $50,000 with first a free cloud credit if you exclusively plan to use their program for the next 2 or 3 years. And so that can help like do those things. So I help with a lot of that type of stuff. And then there's the also like engineering technical support, which I do less and less because unfortunately, like it's hard to switch from technical to non-technical. And I've had to put that one more in a back pocket. I do it a lot on my own, but not as much for work. Yeah. And then what else? What else do I do? I work. That's about it. I'll stick with that. It's a lot of stuff.
That was quite a mouthful. That's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Real quick, shout out to NC State. I'm actually about 8 miles away from them right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, living in Raleigh. Moved here from LA. If you've been following me on Twitter, you know that I moved out of LA moved out of LA to Raleigh, and I'll be here for as long as my company lets me work remote, which is fingers
Nice.
crossed a while.
Forever.
It's a lot cheaper to live on this side of the country.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it so far. Very very nice out. Nice to have seasons again. I like the weather in LA, but it's nice to be here
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I miss Atlanta.
Yeah. I actually drove through Atlanta on my way to LA from North Carolina.
Yeah.
We did the cross country trip down the coast all the way up. That was a long drive. So hoping you didn't cover too much of this in your explanation, but what are some of the highlights of your job? Like something that makes you say, "This is why I do this." I think I have a sneaking suspicion about what some of them might be, depending or based on what you said about like the pack stuff. But
Yeah.
if you can expand
Uh,
on it.
it's anything that really brings joy to people, and like them being like, wait, I can do that, or something like that is huge for me. I really love being able to put people in a situation that they can succeed, like kind of my ethos mission statement. Like, and if nobody have if you like if you're listening and you don't have one of those, highly recommend sitting down like once every 2 years or stuff like that figure out what your personal mission statement. And mine is like I shepherd motivated people to a goal. That is basically that's kind of everything I do. I help like, and that works in professional, like internally at Riot and externally. So when I have someone who's motivated to do something and really wants to do something, and I can put them in the best possible situation and then watch them succeed, I take a lot of really like pleasure in seeing that success. Because like they've nailed it, they're doing awesome. So seeing like there's a bunch of people who come in over the last few years who have come and pitched me products or ideas or systems that they want to build around Riot's games or around the game industry as a whole. And I've had the excellent like some excellent ones truly come out of that, where it's like, yeah, if Riot let me, I'd give you my own money, type things, or like just like everything, and them growing into these massive companies, or not even, they don't have to be massive companies, but they could just be like these things that are doing amazing. Like we've got some amazing open source products that like are being that people are building, and then other companies are using their work, and it's anytime I see someone succeeding, that's really where I see it.
Almost like a coach, like
Yes.
I was gonna say life coach, but not really. It's more of a professional development coach.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it is coach, is a good one. I really like that, that analogy, because that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to coach them to be the best that they can possibly be. And then like internally, I love the puzzle of managing different timelines and things that are priorities for various things, where it's like, oh, this team has this priority, this team has this priority, well, we have this priority. It's like, how do I do the chess pieces and everything to make sure that we can like get that API built, but I'll end the documentation and everything and getting it all released. And that stuff's also incredibly satisfying.
yeah. Okay, we've gone about 25 minutes without a tangent, so I'm gonna
Okay,
use my tangent card, my one for the
sure.
show. That's not true. I have a lot. Um, this is something that I've been talking about for a while, uh, and I'd love to see your opinion on it, even though this is completely unrelated to what you do. Um, a coach. I know you said you don't follow league as much these days. You're more of a TFTer, but I
Yeah.
feel like the coach role in professional league has been getting a lot more focus as of recently. I'd love to see that role expanded into sort of like a on stage role where they get to view the players like cameras, and then
Yeah.
they can give like live call outs, like a shot caller role. That'd be really fun.
So I know this is something that's being discussed, and like it currently is something that happens in CS:GO and I believe Rainbow Six and maybe COD. I don't know like about that. I know CS:GO for sure does it, where a coach could be on stage and they really don't talk a lot, but they can if they want. It's more calling out the buy rounds and like sell rounds and stuff like that. I can see the value of it, but I think that there is a intrinsic like unfairness of like someone whose entire focus is I can watch the entire map, which would basically make them a sixth player,
Mhm.
because like realistically in that position they're becoming the shot caller, they're dictating buys, they're doing everything, and it would take a lot of the agency off of the professional players and put it on that coach. So I don't think I would personally want that. What I will say is I think that esports coaching is not at the place it should be.
Mhm.
I think they're like with so I'm a big soccer fan, so I'll steal this, and I'll use couple different analogies. Jurgen Klopp, who is the manager, the skipper, the head of Liverpool, he is basically the CEO, the coach, everything for that team. Um, Bill Belichick for the Patriots, he is basically the CEO, the coach, and everything for that team. Um, uh, I forget who the coach for the Spurs is. I'm blanking. uh, Greg Popovich for the Spurs. He's the CEO, the coach, or whatever. He is involved in every aspect of that, and that is he's involved in the. They're all involved in both the hey, how does this team run on the game day? They're also involved in hey, how do I develop the next generation of players for me? How do I do trades? They're very involved in that, and so they know everything about everybody. but they're also very having to do outward facing stuff. Like they're specifically like out there doing their own endorsements, their own talking, their own whatever, and being these public figures for these organizations where it's like, yeah, Jurgen for Liverpool has like $100 million worth of endorsement deals because he's just like he's internal and external, and we're not seeing that yet in gaming. We have not seen the CEO coach. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that they should be the GM. Like there should be a very strong GM, but there should be a coach who is very much involved in every stage of like amateur to pro and know what the pipeline is. And part of this is like the replaceability that we're seeing in some of this stuff where like the average NFL coach gets at least 2 years to try stuff out, or the average college coach gets 4 years because it's like one full recruiting cycle of four people, like of people coming through college. Um, we're not seeing that in esports, so you don't have the time to be like analyzing what the next generation is going to do and bring those up. Um, and so I'm curious. I think the closest we're going to see that might happen here is Bjergsen. I think Bjergsen has
Mhm.
the potential to do that because he is this huge international player, like one of the greatest all time, maybe the greatest North American player, like an LCS player, not North American player, but maybe the greatest LCS player. Yeah, he's an NA resident, so we'll take him. Maybe he's the greatest LCS player of all time with insane knowledge about the game. But we'll have to see, is he interested in like coaching? Like, is he interested in the aspects of the GM role? Is he interested in the, hey, how do we bring up new players? How do we build training programs? Everything like that. And I think overall we're starting to see some of this. Like 100 Thieves have their, what was it, 100 Thieves Next,
Yeah.
and then TSM does have that program for like for their younger folks, and various other orgs are getting involved. Evil Geniuses has their like they're really doing a big push into college, and various other teams. So I think we're starting to see some of that focus. But for the longest time, it's been like, oh, here's your pro coach, and here's your academy coach, and they may never talk. And the
Mhm.
problem is there should be a positional coach. Like there should be eventually we're going to see a coach. There's going to be a top lane coach. There's going to be a bot lane coach. There's going to be a mid lane coach. There's going to be a jungle coach. There's going to be like we're going to be moving to a point where there's massive coaching staffs, and they're all going to have to report to one coach who has the overall philosophy and understands how everybody's going to fit through. Like we,
That
we we haven't gotten to the point where all these people are like product managers.
I was actually going to say something about product managers, but I'll save it for later. Um, I think that's one of the main advantages esports does have over traditional sports right now, is it mutates and evolves so quickly, so quickly. Not only the game state because it is constantly being changed by Riot, of course, but just the infrastructure, the esports infrastructure is changing. But you're correct. The Bjergsen role shift is what brought that discussion in my head. I was thinking, um, it's great to have people who are in a position of power at esports organizations who have some recent experience actually playing esports. I know a good majority of esport team owners are previous pro players, if not most of them.
Yeah,
Um, but it's usually pro players from very, very early on. They usually ducked out around season 2 or season 3 at the latest. So they've been out of the game for a while. So it's great to see some recent talent in a lead role. I am woefully ignorant of most esports, but I'd
yeah.
love to see more about what's coming in from
I'll
this
I'll
perspective.
also say that I'm not convinced that the organization needs to be led by people from esports. I mean, having knowledge of the esports industry is very helpful.
Yeah.
But you look at FlyQuest, and you look at um, Dignitas, and you look at Golden Guardians, and you look at Evil Geniuses. The heads of those companies are not necessarily these endemic, like had been in esports my entire life type people.
Mhm.
People who are very into esports, but not super endemic with those things. But they are absolutely building programs and systems that are going to make those companies and those orgs successful for the next 10 years.
I
I
think
actually have a lot of concern that the orgs that are trading on, hey, we're ex pros, is going to collapse in the next 5 years.
I think a marriage of the two sort of philosophies is going to be vital to this type of thing, because I mean, you hit the nail on the head. One, a lot of these people are coming straight from high school or college and who don't
Yeah,
have a ton of professional experience in either business or this type of field. So you definitely need somebody who knows how to do this thing.
yeah,
Um, but I also think that and this is coming from somebody obviously with zero esports experience, very little business experience, so take everything I say with a massive grain of salt. But
yeah.
I think that the ability to have sort of that empathy for the player, from a player's perspective, is definitely important to have in some sort of executive role. Maybe not owner, maybe not CEO or manager or
Yeah.
whatever the term is, but somewhere that they can make decisions and keep things in check. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That I think that was my tangent a lot of time of the day.
But
I
you
derailed.
you also no, but sure, but
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna
Yeah.
go down more on this. You also have to measure that against so many people are friends in this industry, so they're hesitant to cut someone, or they're
Mhm.
hesitant to move on from a player or anything like that. I mean, most of the GMs and everybody we have in the LCS are not that anymore, but there are some contracts still looming or still have been existing because based on relationships and stuff. Um, Having someone who like I don't know if you saw Moneyball, but in that, but Billy Bean is famous for not really getting close to the players because it makes it easier for him to do the transactions, and to treat them as numbers. Like, how
Mhm.
do I make the best team? Rather than like, I'm this guy with the kid is no longer going to have a job type stuff. And it really, really sucks. And but on the other hand, like with everybody moving into wanting to do more amateur and everything space right now, like who's your number one? Like, would you hire someone who is built currently building like esports amateur systems or anything like that, or do you go hire someone who's been running AAU programs for like basketball players to go from, hey, I'm playing in middle school to I'm now playing at Duke to now I'm playing in the NBA?
Mhm.
Like, like it has been doing that for 20 years. Like, who do you choose? And we're going to see some back and forth there where there's a very large amount of reasons why you should choose the esport people, but that experience from someone who's been running an AAU program is going to be invaluable.
Mhm. It's this sort of I don't know. It's very hard to quantify. I think that that's a excellent point where there is uh relevant related experience in these roles, like you're saying, from an amateur to a professional scene in a sport. And then if you bring these people in, they'll have a wealth of knowledge about how the system works, but they might not have a wealth of knowledge about how this actual thing works. But I think you make a good point where at the end of the day, there does need to be somebody who can, like you said, treat them like a number, which is
Yeah.
an interesting thing. But
It's hard, but that's sports because like I have a background in doing sports for like the Atlanta Braves and stuff, like stats for the Atlanta Braves and stuff like that, where I did a lot of sabermetrics work and stuff like that back in the day, and that's what it had to become. Like I loved individual players, but I'd also be like, yeah, don't ever put this person in against a left-handed batter, period. Like literally anybody else on the team, numbers wise, would be better. And it becomes those things, and it could be situational. Like I'm curious if we're going to start seeing more of that, like platooning. Like we have these expanded rosters
mhm.
that like you could have someone being like, oh, you're going up a team that's really heavy on the bot lane. Okay, well, we're like the meta change or something like that. Well, we're gonna have this person who's really good at that meta.
I would love to see that. I'd love to see sort of like a pinch hitter situation for esports where it's like last minute change. I don't know what the lock in. I'm sure there's lock in times for when they have to have
Yeah,
their rosters in, but we're gonna put
yeah.
in tactical instead of double lift or whatever the thing is. I love that sort of thing. Okay, before we get too off track, let's circle back to we
Well,
can we can
I'll say
okay.
I want us to have, because we're going to use this ref for the baseball reference. I want the loogie for gaming. The If you don't know what loogie is, it's LOOGY. It's left-handed one out guy. It's the guy you bring in who just he's a left-hander. You bring him in, he strikes out one person and is gone.
What he's
That's
just
all he
like
does.
the wild card where you just bring him in because he's different
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it trips him up.
he's very he gets that right-handed batter out. They're not used to him, and then you go back to the other pitchers.
That's I know nothing about sports, so that's a
Yeah,
new
yeah,
one for me.
yeah.
That's interesting. I'd like I don't know. I want to talk more about that later because I feel like we're anyone who's like listening to this and they're like, I really want to know what team does, but they're just talking about esports. I feel bad for those people. So
Yeah.
we'll get back to these tangents at the end of the show. As of right now, let's circle back to what are some things that you actually struggle with? Like, what are some things that give you problem at your job?
So the main thing I struggle with is time and like context switching. So time being like I only have so much time and as a resource to give. Where I'd like to be able to help hundreds of people, thousands of companies, everything else, but I do have to prioritize things to be able to stay sane. And stay sane and to actually like be able to do other things because I could 100% turn my entire job into helping people, but then other like if I did that, they they wouldn't get new APIs, they wouldn't get new documentation, they wouldn't get like other games would not launch with third party support at all. We would not have like Riot sign on type systems, anything like that. So like I have to balance these things. So that's big. And then it's also the context switching is a really big thing where it's like switching from I'm thinking from a developer focused or like a third party developer where like I've been putting myself in their shoes where they're like I want to build this thing for League of Legends and I'm like okay well I understand your motivation why you're doing that and then switching into a player motivation where it's like why does a player want this or what did they do and then even more like everything at Riot is built on the concept of player value and like how do we generate like give the most value back to a player and do we build this thing or do we build this thing? Like, which is going to be giving the most player value? And devs don't always correspond to that. So making sure that I'm aligned on those two concepts is a big thing.
That's a
Yeah,
new term for me, contact switching. That's really I might be able to utilize that in what I do. Um,
yeah. So those would be really my major ones. Um, yeah. The other one is just like wrangling people down is something I struggle with because as Riot has grown, like be able to switch between like being able now I have to I used to just have League I had to worry about and R&D projects. Now I got League and Valorant and Ledger of Terra and TFT and R&D projects and everybody and being like, okay, let's talk dev stuff and then remembering which one's going on and everything like that. The nice thing is we are hiring a bunch of people. So if you're looking for a job and you're a project manager, we are hiring, I believe, 3 or 4 project managers for my team.
that's a lot of positions. Hey, get in there. Get your
Yes, yeah,
resumes
we're
in.
expanding.
Check out his Twitter. I think he tweeted about it a couple days ago.
Yeah, I did. Or Riot Games. It's the only DevRel job. We posted it once, but I believe it's 4 roles.
Um, okay, that's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
this actually transitions really well into this topic. What skills would you suggest somebody try to hone if they're getting into this type of job?
So I mentioned this earlier where this is kind of a job that really doesn't exist in the gaming industry except at Riot right now. I think that's not true. It exists over at Bungie and Roblox,
Hmm.
and to a lesser extent Steam. And it's basically the concept overall of this program that I run is the developer community and the fans and everybody around the game know what they want way more than we know, or can build it better than we can. So why don't we build APIs, tools, data, etc., and give it to people so they can build those things? Like and a very good example of this is when TFT launched. TFT launched really really quickly. That team crushed it. But TFT launched with no item builder, no like comp system, no anything like that. But our team was like, cool, we can help, we can mobilize a third party development community to build things around that. So that they like within like I think it was like 4 days of release, you had the overlays that allowed you to do your item combinations, so you could learn the game and everything like that. And I give a lot of credit to that for how quickly the game took off because people were able to skip a lot of that learning experience. Um, and you see this also with things like Destiny, where it's like Destiny, their dev program over there is focused on like managing inventory and various systems like that. With Roblox, it's about how do you build new games. You have the same like with Steam, you use their APIs to be able to build things on coaching, and we do a lot of that too, where it's like you have these big companies out there, or even small companies who are building tools for how do I automate learning how to get better and comparing myself to other people. So it like it's this thing that we're like people are like at the big companies are like, oh yeah, this provides value because we don't have to build this thing, but we're also brands that are huge. Um, so people are really invested in building on them. So it's like, would people want to build? Would we have 50 to 100,000 developers wanting to build things on the right API if we didn't have millions and millions and millions of players? Probably not. But could you still be able to build a program around one or two or three or five developers? Absolutely. And be able to do stuff like that. So one of the things that I would definitely say is the biggest skill here is like there's a combination of skills. Like one is like, can you manage a community? Can you grow like something from nothing or maintain it like and get it to bigger like and get people engaged and passionate about a topic. That's super important. And then the ability to manage products and do that is super super important because you're having to work with multiple teams internally, work with people externally, and understand what the priorities. Build out prioritization docs, build out pitches for why you would do various things, and all that type of stuff. Because some of the things we also have to do is like we have to justify why should we do it with third party developers rather than do it internally. Usually that argument's really easy, but that's an argument you have to make.
Yeah. No, that's such a fascinating insight into this job. It really gives a lot of context to um like what you do because like you said community management and this sort of project management role, that marriage of those two uh studies, what's the word? Philosophies or
Yeah,
skill sets. I bet you that's a lot rarer than a lot of people may imagine.
yeah. It
Because
it, it is not an easy group to find, and it's something that you like the really successful product managers have because most of the time, like I do DevRel mostly externally, but like the roles we're hiring and there's a like and very good programmers do that all internally where you're just like you're managing a community of various dev teams that are trying to do stuff and you got to keep them all aligned and going towards one direction with one goal with like occasional tangents but like you're do same structures.
yeah, that's fascinating. I love the idea of community management on an internal basis because I don't think I've ever heard of it referred to as that before for an internal group.
It gets a lot of different titles but like what do you like it community management it internally but with like hiring power is HR.
Yeah, it's HR. That's something that always I don't know if it's frustrating or if it's interesting is how many different names for the same job
Mhm.
something can be. And that one's frustrating, but I think what's even more frustrating is when the same name gets used for many different jobs. I think that one's worse.
Yeah. Riot
Because
just made an effort to get rid of all of the weird titles at the company and to trying to basically make sure that every like there was structure on every title. So it's like we follow similar to the Amazon model where it's like your level one, level two, level three, level four, level five, level six, level seven. So that gives you a little and like managers have their own thing and executive has their own thing. And so you know where you are on that and that basically aligns various things across those things and responsibilities how they're impacting the company everything and then trying to remove things like I'll be moving from developer relations senior developer relations to I believe product manager developer relations because I'm that's really what I do but I'll do it. But the product I'll own is developer relations.
So no more titles like senior developer of memes and
Yes, yeah,
stuff like
none of
that.
that. Thank God. That stuff is
Rest in
unnecessary.
peace.
Yeah,
I'm sure some
yeah.
people are mourning that loss.
Honestly, it makes it so much. And so one that like confused the heck out of me for numerous times was, what is more senior? Project manager, product manager, or program manager?
Mhm.
Those are yeah, those are all PMs, but they mean vastly different things.
Don't even get me started on acronyms in the business world. Acronyms in the business world are a mess, especially in esports, because I feel like esports and gaming in general reuse so many acronyms that are already like standardized in the world, and they're just like, hey, we're gonna use that acronym, but we're gonna use it for something else. And you're like, okay, all right.
So, so, so you don't want me to do like CAC, CPC, LTV, MRR, ARR, SaaS, B2C, B2B, R&D?
It's terrible when you're trying to look this stuff up and you look it up and you're like, government tax agency, that doesn't sound right. This is
Yeah.
if you, and this is hypocritical of me because I named my podcast like something that's eerily similar to a podcast that's produced by LOL Esports. But if you're doing something, um, and the name of it, what you're doing is like already being taken by a vastly like senior thing, try not to do that. Like I know sometimes it just happens or it's unavoidable, but
We
yeah.
have that same issue even at the company where it's like we have the Riot API, which is the external API, and then people internally were like, we're going to call this API that runs all these things for Riot the Riot API, and and we're like, no, there's only one Riot
That's
API. We
ours.
can't have multiple. We can't be. We'll be so confused.
You know what you should do? You should do a League of Legends battle for it. Whichever team wins gets to take the title of the Riot API.
Wait, no, it'd have to be a game in all four games
Oh
to be
yeah,
like keep the best score
simultaneously.
over. Yeah, no,
Simultaneously.
simultaneous.
You have to be playing
Uh,
TFT, Legends of Runeterra, Valorant, and League at the same time.
I do occasionally play Legend and Terra and TFT at the same time.
Well, you got time in between rounds. That long
Yeah,
timer.
yeah, yeah. I love TFT. TFT is my favorite game we've made by far.
I was when we were talking about TFT earlier in the episode, and you were talking about how quickly they crunched it out. We actually had the opportunity to interview two of the members of the original TFT team on the show. Well,
Who did you
Mortdog
have?
wasn't the member of the original team, but Alex
Yeah.
Ranger,
Mm,
um,
mm.
who credits himself as a driving force of TFT at Riot, and then yeah, of course, Mortdog, who
Mm.
is the lead designer. But yeah, I asked them both about their stories about TFT development, and they have some great TFT horror stories. So if you guys are interested more in about what TFT was like and how TFT was developed early on, listen to the Riot Ranger 2 episode. It's like number 13 or something, and then the Mort Dog episode, number 17 or something. Yeah, okay. That is the end of that section. Let's move on to something that I think we've already covered. So I'll try my best to reword the question so we're not just treading the same water. So you wear a lot of the same hats, or sorry, you wear a lot of different hats in this role, and the community management and the investment advice, among other things. Is this typical for this kind of thing? Because I know you say that this is sort of a unique role in the gaming world. People at Bungie, people at Roblox, are they doing sort of the same kind of thing, or is this really unique to your position?
So I would say it's unique in that I'm probably doing multiple people's jobs rather than someone specializing on something. Like we usually you'd have a community specialist, or you'd have a tech support specialist, or a project or product manager who's like that. I kind of do a bit of all of that. Obviously, I do have a product manager who works with me a lot, but it's also just like, hey, Gene, go figure out how we're going to do this stuff a lot. So it's that. But they like if you really heavily index into one of these, like that's fine. Like the big thing is like be T-shaped. I don't know if anybody on this has talked before, which is like have a huge depth of knowledge in one very like narrow thing, but have a broad knowledge about a ton of different things. And this allows you to be dangerous with other things. Like I have like incredibly deep knowledge in like developmental processes and like how does something go from an idea to being developed. And then I have knowledge of in like product management, like community management, none of which I would say are my expertise, but like it through that T-shaped model, I'm able to like execute at the best of my knowledge or pull in people that when I know that I'm over my head to be able to do those things. Yeah.
That is an awesome way of looking at it. Right now, I would say I am excellent on the top line. I have a great amount of knowledge about a lot of different things, but I think I'm lacking more on the
Yeah.
vertical line.
The vertical line is one you have to figure out. I
Mhm.
recommend everyone figure out, and you go hard on that. Like you really deep dive on that. Like I haven't written code for that Riot production in 2.5 years. But if anybody at Riot needed me to write code or needed me for a technical discussion, they could pull me in and I could still have that discussion nonstop, easily. Because I on the weekends I'm coding. I read books about this type of stuff nonstop. It's that type of stuff. But in general, for like this type of role, there like the main thing that you have to be very good at is getting developer trust. If like you have to be someone that can trust and believe that they have your best interest at heart. Because like if a developer thinks that you're just using them or like you don't care about them, they're out. They're yeeting themselves out the window. To steal the language of the kids. They like you, that's the biggest thing. If you can build a program with developer trust, um everything else you can learn.
Yeah, that's great. Um, I'm just gonna skip this one because I think we've already covered that. So this is great how you talk about earning and keeping and maintaining trust with third party developers. Um, are there any examples of third party devs that you've had a great experience with that you've worked with at Riot?
So I purposely try not to call out specific companies because it would like as soon as I do, someone's like, Gene favors this company, or Gene is endorsing company A, B, or C. Like I think I liked someone's tweet for being like they raised money or they did something, and someone found it be and was like, Gene only cares about this company, and I'm like, no, guys, love you all. Like I want you all to succeed. It's just what surfaces to me on social and stuff like that. But like there's been a bunch of them. I like one of the coolest things is we will see about every 3 months a new vertical pop up around our ecosystem, and like it's always fascinating to see kind of a gold rush of things happen there. So like a few years ago, like I'll list out a few of them. Like coaching was a huge thing back in the it still is, but like everybody was like, wait, we can actually do coaching with the amount of data you do. And so we had this rush of companies that were doing coaching things. Then it was like tournaments where it's like we released the tournaments API, and then probably about 3 or 4 months ago people are like, oh wait, we could just automate League of Legends tournaments every day, every minute of the day, and people could do that. And it's like, well, yeah. And so we had these companies spin up around tournament stuff and everything else like that. And then we had stuff like social giveaways where it's like, hey, play video games, win prizes. That type of that vertical kind of blew up, and so we've gotten these verticals that just like grow and grow and grow. So it's been interesting. The nice thing about our ecosystem is nobody's really we haven't gotten to the point, and it's the ecosystem is massive. We haven't gotten to the point yet where people are really stealing market share from each other. There's enough to go around for everybody. So one of the things I constantly have people come to me and being like, they already had access, they've been working on this, and I'm like, yeah, build it better, because players are fickle and they'll find the best tool out there and use it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great thing to say because it's very true. I can think of examples right now of tools that
Yeah.
have been staples in the community for a long time, and then somebody comes along and makes something better, and in within months, within weeks,
Yeah,
the old tool gets surpassed until they do an
yeah.
update or something. Um,
I because a different game, I can talk about it. Wowhead did this excellently in WoW. WoW, like there, we used all sorts of different products when playing WoW back in the day, and then Wowhead came around and it killed everything. Like it was the dominant thing. Like I would not be surprised if they had 95% market share for all WoW stuff at that time. Like by like 2 years of operation. Um, we're not there. We obviously not there, but like these types of things, like people are constantly having to innovate, and like some of the like the hallmarks for me of success are people who have great communication, tell people what they're doing, and it's very clear what this is going to do to for a player, for anybody using it. And like for like a negative like type thing, is the people who do not communicate. Like one of the simplest things that someone, if they want to be successful around the Riot Games ecosystem, is talk to me. Um, because like um one, I want to know what's going on, I want to be able to keep track of what you're doing. Two, hey, if we know you're doing certain things, that may open up opportunities, it may change our philosophies on things and various things. Like we work very closely with the community on like the community of developers really wants to push envelopes and do things and like get new things into client, new ways to do data or anything like that. And we're all, we have rules and policies in place, but we're really willing to go to bat to change those. Like if like one recently is we had a few companies come to us and they're like, in the tab screen, when you tab in League, you can see the timers for Dragon and Baron and everything else like that. And it's like, yeah. It's like, why can't we just put an overlay over your mini map that shows those same timers? And I'm like, and they're like, all we're removing is you having to hit tab. Like, and I'm like, this makes sense. Like this was a rule built back in the day when like we were like whatever, but like this makes sense. Also, like the kind of rule of thumb for my, could I do this on a piece of paper next to my screen? Yeah, I could do this on a piece of paper next to my screen. So why can't we just do it in the game? And we talked to the league team and we went back and forth with there, and they're like, yeah, this sounds fine. Yeah, let's do this. Let's allow this. And so we're allowed to we make these changes to the game and to the dev ecosystem that allow these types of tools to propagate.
that's such a good story because I remember I've been playing League for a long, long time. Probably not quite as long as you, but a long, long time.
Oh, I
And I
stopped for like
remember.
6 years.
Oh, okay, okay. So I might have some historical knowledge on you, but there was a time where this program, I forget what it was called, um, they were very popular, and they introduced this feature for jungle timers where it would show up when a camper was respawning. And this was way, way, way previously before there was even an indicator on the map that there was going to be
Yeah,
a camp spawning. Um, and very, very quickly, Riot's like, no, slammed it down. And since then, like you said, the game has changed a lot. There's way more information available to you in the game itself. Um,
yeah,
and it's really interesting to see that that rule changed because the game changed. So that's a great
yeah.
story to show that yeah, there's a lot of flexibility going on in there.
We're also always looking for things that will help the make game become more accessible to people. Like sure, like and try and thinking about the philosophy of like, does doing this in your head actually like make, like, is that a skill expression we want to show? And like should the skill expression be, I can mentally track the timers of everybody's ult or something, like, or like the camps and stuff like that. They started tracking those with like in the client because they were like, yeah, that's not something that should be a skill you have to learn. I mean, sure, you can learn it, it makes your job much easier if you do, but doesn't have to. And we think about this like with the dev ecosystem and policies around all of our games. Like with TFT, the skill expression is being able to make enough, like being able to make decisions in a very short amount of time and pivoting as you can. So we try and direct people to not impact those decision making windows. Like sure, you can do the item changer, you can show them, hey, these are all the comps that like people are playing right now, but don't do contextual information about various things. There was some other stuff like when you remember when TFT launched, if you had two of a character, it wouldn't show like there was nothing special about the third one. Like there's no stars next to whatever. You just had to click and do it. Our community is like, well, that's dumb. Can we just put like an overlay that just like it recognize if you have two ashes, it like blinks or something over the third ash so you don't miss buying it? And we're like, I mean, that makes sense. And we talked to the TF team, and they're like, yeah, we're planning on building this anyway. If they want to do it for the next 2 weeks in the meantime, sure, and stuff like that.
There was a very brief amount of time in season 2, I think, of TFC or set 2 of TFC where they had that feature, but I think there was a intentional choice that was made to delay it when you're rerolling so that it only pops up after like a second. So there was I think I forget who said it, but there was skill expression where if you were rolling really fast, you couldn't just be like roll, oh there it is. You had to actually see the character. And I think that's
Yeah,
since been changed because I definitely noticed it coming up a lot faster. But I love
yeah,
that somebody at Riot thought that like that 1 second, that's a great time to add some skill expression to the roll down. Because roll
yeah,
down was really important back then. I think it's become
yeah.
less.
It's not as important now.
Yeah.
Um, but the like another one is like we obviously want to prevent like same technology. People have wanted to build things that put an overlay like a circle or something like that over like I say I want canes. And like I only have one, so it shouldn't circle anyway. It shouldn't show anything. But I'm rolling down and I want it to show the overlay the minute it sees a cane because otherwise I'll miss it. Like
Mhm.
we're like, nah, you can't do that. Like because that's not part of that thing. That becomes unfair because you're like I'm highlighting things and it does make that rolling process much easier.
Yeah.
For like 2, 3, 4, etc.
Yeah. At what point where do you draw the line? Because at what point does somebody just generate like an auto roller where you're just like, I want this unit, this
I
unit,
will
this
come
unit.
after that so hard. That is part of my job I haven't talked about. I work very closely with legal and brand and the
Mhm.
game teams, and we shut down products that change gameplay and negatively. We've only had to since I started at Riot had to outright like kill 6 companies, um, but we have massaged and redirected companies down a like a more holistic, happy path over the last few years. But yeah, that's something I have to work a lot with legal and stuff like that around.
If you can later, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that because I think that's something that doesn't get a lot of attention these days. But we'll circle back to that in
Yeah,
the last
the amount of
section.
people who don't understand IP rules and IP law, shocking. And I know there's a topic later about the Twitch, and I have a spicy take on
Okay, all right. I
it.
think we'll have both some interesting discussion points about it because I don't
Yeah.
think it's as open and shut as Twitter would have you believe.
No, I mean I think it's
Um,
open and shut, but I think it's open and shut the other way.
Okay, okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Um, that's actually a good tangent. Not that part, but the previous part. Without naming any names, obviously, if you can, have there been any devs who have just been a pain in the butt to work with? Just like this is a bad experience for everyone involved.
So obviously I'm not going to name anybody, but I can say things that have been done that will obviously get you on my shit list immediately and get you on Riot shit list. It's like, cool, don't answer any of our communication. Not a good idea. Not a good idea to not a good idea to not answer our emails, answer our communications, or talk to us. Do not release features without running them by them, especially if they're going to massively change player gameplay. That can really run afoul of us quickly. Do not try and sell player data. That will absolutely get you like in hot water very quickly. Um, uh, like the stuff like that. Like if or really breaking our TOS or using IP to like connect your brand with Riot's brand, like using the Riot IP to further your own brand and being like, we have a partnership when you don't have a partnership, stuff like that. And then the biggest is like you're building something that's going to break a game or break the competitive landscape. That's when my ion cannon comes up and we burn something to crisp.
So those are all things that you shouldn't do when you're
Yes,
working on a
but
project at
someone
Riot.
has done. So that's
But somebody has done. This
yeah,
is all not new ground. What are
yeah.
some things that a new dev should know when approaching Riot for a project like this?
Have a clear vision of what you're doing. I mean, we to be fair, we accept everybody. Like we have community developers. If you want to join developer, it's discord.gg/Riot Games DevRel, or if you want to join developer.riotgames.com, you can find the link there as well. We allow anybody. Like there's a dev key side, which is like here's your experimentation, you're trying stuff out, etc. We allow everybody to do that. But the minute you're trying to start to earn money or build a company here, we need to talk. And maybe that can be through text message, like through Discord. That can be through the developer portal. That can be through email, etc. But it's all about we need to know about what's going on there and like having. And we have hundreds of companies in the ecosystem that are almost thousands that are making money and doing these things and are very where we're fine with them and they're good. People just need to make sure that like they follow guidelines and policies and systems in there. And honestly, our community from the Discord is will find things and tell people, hey, you can't do that, and help them find a way to do it before sometimes I'll find it. And so I'll be like, I'll come in and be like kicking down the door, being like, I'm so upset. Why are you doing this? And they're like, it's okay. We already took it down. We're moving. We have this plan. Here you go. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That just get like throw away anger and continue to move on. Because I'm also very quick to forgive and forget. Because I can understand where it's like, hey, I'm trying to do something, I'm trying to do this, but at the same time, you really do have to follow our policies and don't do anything illegal. Don't do betting. Don't do betting. Don't do cryptocurrency. Don't do blockchain. Those things will get you on Riot's shit list so quickly.
That's like, I think you just wrote a white paper for a venture capitalist fund. That might be a
I
joke.
am
That might be a joke not everyone gets. I'm
yeah, no,
sorry.
yeah. I get tweeted at or DM'd or emailed or something that I'm publicly enemy number one for the cryptocurrency, blockchain, gaming industry, at least once a week or every 2 weeks. Like with people yelling at me nonstop about like because I have a tweet that just automatically goes out being to every 2 weeks being like, don't build anything blockchain,
Oh, I've
don't
seen
build
that.
anything cryptocurrency. And people always are like, why do you hate innovation? And I'm like, solve data privacy and we can talk, but
Mhm.
you can't. And then with the cryptocurrency, any way you're going to do it, you're going to be selling data and making money off player data, like you're making it a transactional thing. Also, something we're not going to allow.
Mhm. Um,
Yeah, and then wagering, that's an international law
yeah.
thing we're going to have to run into.
Part of the
Except on
prep work.
esports. If you want to gamble on esports, there are ways to do that. And esports team, the esports org at Riot has figured out ways to work with partners. I think to do that. I'm not sure.
Part of the prep work for this episode, I actually came in and sat in while I was working on one of the office hours for dev relations, and I thought that was just like super cool. I saw your tweet about it, and I'm like, this seems like a really cool thing for Gene to do because I obviously hadn't talked to you much at that point. So I came in and I
Yeah,
sat through, and I just was on my second monitor watching the Discord
it,
questions,
it,
and I thought that was
it's
a great thing.
and we alternate between doing them in Discord and then doing them on a live stream. This week is a live stream on Twitch. And we'll do an hour. It'll be 11 to 12 this Friday Pacific Standard Time. And we have I think we already have queued up like 40 something questions, but then we'll take questions from anybody who has them and we'll talk about like, hey, this is my what we're going towards or anything like that. It's a really cool thing. I it's one of those things where I had to figure out for scale because I get sometimes the same question 200 times a week, and I was like, well, how do I solve that? And I was like, well, what if I did video and everybody who's asking me this question is watching this? They can't ask it again because I can just send the clip, or someone can be like, Gene answered it here.
Yeah. Um, I've been helping support the support team at our company over the past few months because we've had pretty much exponential growth based on COVID.
Yeah.
And I can say without a doubt, you get thousands of the same question every day. Just it's so easy if you can create a resource. We have a help center that we can direct people
Yeah.
to. But generally speaking, what we do is we have macros that we go through, and we just have cookie cutter responses that don't really look like cookie cutter responses to questions. And
Yeah.
people appreciate that if it looks like you're giving a personal touch to a
Yes.
response,
I to
even if it's just a question that's just like, how do
Hey,
I open
a
up your program?
a peek behind the curtain, I have a Google Doc which is probably 40 pages long, which is like 11 responses to like different types of responses to the most common 20-30 questions I get. So I just copy and paste that over and everything like that.
Have you ever heard
And
of Text Expander?
yeah. Yeah. I actually have a Stream Deck hooked up to some custom software to do it. Yeah, I use the Stream Deck as my macro software.
That's fantastic. I'm sure
Yeah.
Elgato was that way. They were anticipating that when they made that.
They were not, but they're like so. Obviously I come from more tech industry, and everybody in the tech industry after like the Stream Deck was existed for a while, and then everybody in the tech industry was like, wait, we could use this for a lot of other stuff. Yeah, let's do that. And so now I know like video editors that are heavily using it, and like like I know people writing deployment tools that are on a press of a button in systems, and it's such a cool thing. Yeah.
Um, and for anyone who's familiar with Linus Tech Tips, there's a video editor there who's been there for
Oh
pretty
really?
much, yeah, who's been there for a long time. Taryn, I think his name is, and he has like 4 keyboards and a Stream Deck, and he has like stickers on all his extra keyboards that are all like different macros he's set up for use. And
Wow.
he even has the Stream Deck set up where there's like folders and you go inside. He has so many different macros for video editing. He has a video about it, I'm sure. But it's
Yeah.
insane. It's like over like 300 or 400 probably, if not more. Um, yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
insane. I know with that type of workflow, it's probably a lot of duplication and
Mhm.
systems like that. But I actually I sometimes I'm like I wish I had a flow where I just like ingested work at 9 a.m. and I had a process I had to follow for the rest of the day, and at the end of 2 days or after the end of the day, I was just done. Nothing. I don't have anything like that. It's all just like just constantly moving.
Mhm. I think that's tech in general, but
Yeah.
it's it's probably a lot more focused on in your role.
Yeah.
Um, shoot, that's something that you mentioned. Advice for people trying to improve their efficiency is like you said, if you can put in a couple hours of work to reduce future work even by like 5% or
Yeah.
5 seconds, by like, for example, writing a macro or doing something that will shave time off, just do it.
Yeah.
It saves so much time.
Yeah.
I'm
I
notoriously
I
bad at
told
this. Sorry.
I told my team earlier this year. This is why I think I was tweeting about it. I told my team I was taking a week where I was doing no other work but analyzing my process and analyzing how I did my work and figuring out what could stay and what could go and building processes, systems, Excel docs, etc. around that it made it as efficient as possible. Which meant like at the end of it, I only saved, I believe, like 20 minutes per day, but 20 minutes per day over the course of a week, that's a significant amount of time that I now I've actually not budgeted for anything to be taking that time, and it's now experimentation or take a break or anything where sometimes I didn't have that.
Yeah, I envy your organization and driven ability, because that's something that I struggle with a lot. I'll do something inefficient way, even if I know it's inefficient, until I'm basically forcing myself to be like, okay, fine, go through here and fix this and make it better for
Yeah.
next time. I think
It
it's come
helps that
from
I have an engineering background where I can build some like scripts and stuff like that to automate some of the most manual things where it's like, oh, I gotta do this. Okay, well, I built a Chrome extension that does this automatically.
I'm not untechnical, but I'm definitely not like a technical person in terms of engineering. And I've tried so many times to automate or do a auto hotkey script or something for um a thing at my company, and every time it's just like it ends up being more work than it's worth for something that I can't even get work properly. So I wish I had a little bit more of that engineering experience just so I could come in and
That
do that
that is
properly.
a situation where you should have a doc of every time you've had that thought process of everything, and you write down and you make an estimation of how much time it would solve. And then once you have 5 to 10 of those, you bring that to an engineering product manager or an engineering manager, whatever, and it's like, "Hey, if you do these things, I will fix it'll clear up this amount of my workload, and I'll be able to take on more stuff." And they may look at it and be like, "Oh, this actually might fit in other things." And so that's something where I can't like constantly identifying where pain points are, where it's like this feels very inefficient, and like understanding we can't fix it right now, but in the future this will be a fix.
Yeah. I think part of the struggles with that is that our engineering team is just like currently ridiculously
Underwater.
underwater.
Yeah.
The bandwidth is like they're not it's like anything that's not external is like so low on the priority list that it's just I probably shouldn't talk
But
about
they
this.
but they might be
Anyway,
willing to pay for something like an Upwork engineer or somebody like a contractor to spend 2 hours building out a feature thing.
yeah. I'm sure I don't know. It's not something that I have any a lot of say in anyway,
Yeah.
so but that's just I love talking about that kind of thing where
Oh, absolutely.
if you
Automation
can
is
make
awesome.
yourself more efficient, just try to do it. It gets better. Everything that you can do to make your time worth a little bit more will help a lot. Um, okay, I think we covered pretty much everything in terms of the main talking points. Let's riff a little. So
Sure.
let's talk about the hot topic this week. I think it's already past the bell curve a little bit, but I want to bring it back up because I know we got some things to say about it. Google Stadia creative director, who I think has since changed his title on his Twitter to something else, distancing him a little bit from Stadia, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. He
Y-
says that
Yeah.
streamers should pay publishers a license fee to stream their games. And when this went out, within minutes, within hours, within the day, Twitter and subsequent connected Twitter spheres exploded with outrage and very angry people being mad at this person who's saying like, "Hey, you should give us more money to play your game and market your game for free." And that was an argument that was thrown around a lot. It was the argument where streamers are free advertising for every game, and that is something that publishers should only be happy about. Um, and I have mixed feelings about this because coming in as a amateur streamer and as a gamer, I agree with the fact that a lot of the time studios and publishers are getting a lot of free publicity from these people. But at the same time, um, looking at it from a publisher's perspective or even a developer's perspective, when you're playing a game like I think the example I used was The Last of Us or a very narrative focused game, um, if you're playing that on stream and you have 100 people watching you, uh, and they see you play through the whole thing, how likely is it that they're going to go and actually be like, "Hey, I want to buy Last of Us 2 as well"? I think that likelihood goes down more for that type of game than it does
Yeah.
up for. I think your lost sales are going to exceed your uh, advertising marketing sales. And I know that you said you had something spicy, so let's hear it. I want to talk about it.
So my spicy take is not that necessarily that streamers should be paying licensing fees. Um, is that it actually depends on the streamer. It's that the platforms themselves will probably one day need to pay licensing fees. So Twitch, Discord, Twitch, YouTube, etc., will probably one day need to start paying licensing fees to these game companies. I'm not speaking, by the way, not speaking on behalf of Riot here. Uh, this is me just speculating for the future. The that seems like a model that will happen. I believe that there will be streamers that will have to pay actually because there we have seen the rise of streamer and streamer networks, which are main almost like reporting sites where they're doing things like Sports Center and stuff like that. Um, Sports Center pays a license fee for every clip they use on ESPN. Like they don't just use those clips and be whatever. They pay a license fee or they pay someone who's recorded or anything like that, or they have a standing contract with someone. we're going to see that starting to happen more. Especially when it's in the esports space, because the esports space is one of the biggest things where people are struggling to make money in anyway. So I think actually the place we'll see this the most is that type of stuff. Like, could we see like streamer programs where you get to concurrent stream or something like that around things, or you get to do stuff that will maybe. But I'm mainly looking at the programs where it's like directly competing with a studio on something, where it's like if a studio has, I'm really trying not to use Riot as an example. If a studio has a set of podcasts or a set of recap shows and stuff like that, and they that's where they want people to get their content, but then someone else out there is running a business and they take that those audio and video clips and everything from the match and do the same thing. Where does that sit? Like, because it is you're not playing the game, you are commentating on top of it. That's where I start to get or use you're using it as a news source. That's where I start to get I start to get interested. But overall, I feel like in the future we're going to start looking at possible licensing deals with. I mean, Riot will. I'm not saying Riot will, but I see a world where gaming companies will find additional revenue sources or some sort of rev share with
Mhm.
the publishers, which will eliminate a lot of this concern around the streamers. Because I know, and I've spoken to BD folks around the industry who look at influence and they're like, this billions and billions of dollars of money. Sure, it may like what percentage, like what is the actual ROI on an influencer, and we still don't really know that on all of these things. Do I think this type of thing will happen with free to play games? No, free to play games will stay just like influencers go nuts, but on paid games we're going to start seeing more and more stuff because, yeah, as you said, like, is someone going to play Uncharted if someone watched all of Uncharted? I'm exactly like that. Uh so we'll see what's going on there.
Yeah.
Um
That that's a really interesting way to look at it. I'd like to see if companies like YouTube and Google, or sorry, YouTube and Twitch will try to offload those costs a little bit onto
yeah,
some of the top percentage streamers. Like, will so and so who streams to 10,000 people, will they have to pay? Or is Twitch going to eat that cost and take some more
yeah,
rev share from bits or something?
yeah.
Um, I'm going to
And
distance myself. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, and it's gonna be very interesting to see how that continues to grow. Because like the influencer industry, huge, makes it very possible for us to do a lot of things, makes games huge, etc. Like, I credit a lot of Riot and Twitch's growth is was like symbiotic, where Twitch came around and Riot came around, and League became the biggest game on Twitch, and Twitch had this huge like game to be able to do stuff, and so both of them got to grow around that thing, so it was very symbiotic. But now that these platforms are established, the power dynamic is different. And it's gonna be interesting to see what happens here. Do I think company like people used Among Us a lot in this space, where Among Us would not have been huge without streamers?
Mhm.
And I'm like, yes, yes, that's why I'm saying free to play games still not like it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Or there will be games, but if when you're talking about a big budget 100, 200, 300 billion dollar development cycle for some of these games, they're gonna like calculus will change. Where it's like if someone's like, hey, the influencer industry is going to bring us $300 million on this, I don't know, MMORPG shooter in space where you fight aliens that are from the moon. I just mixed like four games, didn't I?
That's actually the setting of the new Halo game. You
Is that
predicted it.
okay?
No,
Okay,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
I was going WoW and Destiny and stuff like that. And if people are doing if they're like if they look at that and they're like, okay, we got to make $1 billion back, how do we do that? And the rev strat and everybody else looks at it and they're like, cool, well, we'll make $100 million from people who watch streamers and then buy the game, but we predict we will lose $200 million in the process. Then the calculus becomes, cool, do we care about streamers, or do we not want people streaming, or do we block streaming or something like that? Like, do I think that'll happen? Probably not, but that is calculus that will have to happen.
Mhm.
And part of the thing that everybody's dancing around here is the whole actual legal aspect, um, which is, legally these game companies can do this. And so what I actually foresee happening before any of these other things happen is someone will actually get some laws passed, or regulations passed around this type of stuff, which will allow better fair use, monetization, what
Yeah.
is actually like covered here.
Well, the fair use argument has been hovering around on YouTube and in the content creator community for a long time. And there's some great videos about it. And there's some great videos about how a lot of people just misuse the term and misuse the concept a lot. I
As
think
someone who was pre-law, I would say that most people who tell me it's fair use do not understand what fair use means.
there's a pretty good video by Tom Scott about the copyright situation on
Yes,
YouTube.
Tom's great.
Yeah, it's about 55 minutes. If you have time, give it a watch. If you're interested in this kind of thing, obviously, it's not
Yeah.
very dry at all. It's actually just an entertaining video. So, but it goes into a lot more depth on how copyright and fair use actually work online. It mostly goes for like videos and stuff like that, but I'm sure there's a lot of stuff there that's applicable to games. But real quick, I want to distance myself from you real quick so I can make some hot
Yeah.
takes that aren't related to what he's saying about how Riot does co-streaming and how Riot does stuff for LCS. So I think that a lot of the head content creators right now, not calling anyone out specifically, but people who co-stream LCS, and they have these broadcasts, I think that um, they're acting a little entitled in this sort of thing because there was a lot of controversy a few months back coming from a few streamers who were disallowed co-streaming because of their attitudes or their behavior or something like that. And their fans were up in arms. They were saying like, I don't want to watch the LCS broadcast. I want to watch this broadcast. And I'm like, well,
Mhm.
yeah, that's the point. You're taking away views from the official broadcast, which Riot is making money on, and you're going to give money to so and so who badmouths the company every 5 minutes. I think that's a pretty fair stance to take by Riot, and obviously
It,
it
I will get some probably blowback on this one, but I will say that gamers are entitled. Gamers feel very, very entitled. As one who, like, I believe that every game should always work and everything like that. Um, these do come back to businesses. All games come back to being businesses, and if you want a game to continue, it needs to, like, be sustainable. And like, co-streaming, like, maybe I know zero thing about co-streams, but I can talk about this in a developer centric space where if individual developers are building out sites, and they're all using and they're all doing like Google ads on their sites, and so you have these 20, 30, 40 sites out there. It is splitting an audience through all of those through all those ads, and the money is being distributed through different ones. Versus, hey, these 30 sites, I negotiate with an ad partner, and they will all, so in this example, all of them have negotiated separately with ad partner and get different cost per monetization, like how much someone's making per ad click and stuff like that. So some are making $3, some are making $2, some are making $1, some are making 50 cents per click, per ad buy, etc. But if someone comes in and is like, I will represent all 30 of these at once, and goes to him, it's like, hey, and it's not one site, it's all 30 sites and all of their viewership and all of their links. You can negotiate a much higher like ad rate and be like, everybody gets $6, everybody gets $7 per things like that. That's type of stuff is kind of where I look at this philosophy, where it's like, I know very, very little. I don't really want to like say too much about it because I amount of my depth here, but that's something that I'm sure they have to consider, where they are trying to negotiate deals with advertisers and businesses and being like, here's the viewership, and they don't control the content, they don't control the that's on these streams, they don't control the public correctness,
Mhm.
the PR, the whatever on any of them. Because like if you have 100,000, 200,000 people on a site, but it's also advertising something very unsavory or negative, is the ad actually valuable?
And
Or if the
there's
person
becomes
makes fun of the ad nonstop,
yeah,
does that is the ad valuable?
it becomes to the point where I think is the ad valuable is losing importance versus like you said, is this damaging to the brand itself? Is this damaging to the advertiser? Like you said, if somebody making fun of the ad. But I think to quote you, gamers are entitled. I think that really goes I think that extends to a lot of just like influencers today. I think the internet has evolved so much in the past 5 years, in the past 10 years, that it was sort of like the Wild West 5 to 10 years ago, where there was just no rules, there was no anything. There's just a bunch of people sitting in front of their computer gaming, and it's changed to the point where now people are making hundreds of millions of dollars. Organizations based entirely on streaming and content creation. So yeah, the rules have to change a little bit, and people will get mad at companies for enforcing brands rules on a streamer who it, to be perfectly frank is just being a very negative and toxic person in terms of the brand. Like if you are constantly bad mouthing aspects of a company in terms of just saying terrible things about them and about individual people at that company, why why are you entitled to that company's assets to make money? Like why should they not just treat you like anyone else? They're actually supporting you with
Yeah,
certain tools and benefit programs. So I
yeah.
think that's going to be a hard realization a lot of these content creators have to face in the coming years. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
I have a
Um,
recommendation for another guest who can talk a lot about that.
I would
I
love to
won't
talk
out
with
them
more people about
in
that.
case they don't want to in case they're like they
Okay.
don't want to be publicly named. But I will tell you the person who
Okay.
would be able to probably talk at authority on this type of stuff.
After the show,
Yeah,
I wanna talk more about that and see if we can line something up because I
yeah,
would love. This is a very near and dear topic to my heart and a lot of people in my friend group. So,
yeah,
um, fingers crossed we'll be able to talk more about that in the future.
for sure.
Um, but yeah, I think we got a little bit off topic, but
No,
um,
it's a super interesting space. I think one of the biggest problems right now is there is no real regulation. The closest is like you must put hashtag ad, you must do
mhm,
call out when you're actually advertising. But the amount of free gifts and stuff that happen in the gaming industry and stuff like that is insane. Like
mhm,
absolutely insane to me. Like today was the day everybody got a Xbox One or at 1X or got a PlayStation. Those are 400s, whatever, 600, 800 dollar devices, whatever they are, and nobody really is like ad. They're like they sound it to me. I'm like that's an ad. Like you put it on the internet, that's an ad. So I come from having to deal with a lot with the U.S. government and dealing with the U.S. government. You can't take anything from anybody. Like I think it was like $40 or whatever.
yeah,
Like you go to a conference that knows the biggest largest chunk of it is military folks or government folks. Like they'll be like, here's swag item, and with the exact price and receipt, so they can write it off and like say I did not get bribed, and stuff like that. Like I took bribery training every year for 4.5 years, sometimes twice a year, and like it's a big thing. So I am very hesitant to take any gifts or anything within the industry. Like people have like been like, here's a free hoodie, here's whatever, and I'm like, nah, like this means that I owe you something, or like I'm going to treat you differently or anything. And so it's like I think that's one thing that's something's going to have to give. Where I'm a little, I was a little, I don't know, like disgusted is too strong of a word, but I was a little uncomfortable with the fact that there's so many people in the industry being like, "Here's my PS4
Mhm.
PS5 review or whatever," and it's like, this is an ad. The
Yeah.
only you got this early. This was not a news thing. This was an ad.
What do you think about the people who will say, they'll disclose, like, I received this game or this console early to review for free? Do you think that's strong enough, or do you think that's still, it's not really?
If it is a press outlet, if you're treated like a press outlet, reviewing it and something like that, and there are editorial standards and stuff like that, awesome. That's how it should work. It's the literally everybody who is like a major player in the game industry
Mhm,
got one today.
mhm,
Like I uh I uh I love Corey Balrog. Works over like very closely here. Works over on God of War and stuff. But like he tweeted out like just got like my look what Sony sent me today, and I'm like, yeah, this is an ad.
that's
Like it,
it's scary because people don't want to give up stuff. People
yeah.
like stuff, and free stuff is awesome. I'll just point out, if you are interested in giving Gene anything for free, you can go through me and I'll accept it on his behalf. No.
Yeah. I mean,
That's a
obviously, I do like it's an industry that thrives on free stuff. But
Mhm.
like, if someone was like, "Hey, I'll give you an RTX 3090 or 3080," I'd be like, really, really hard for me to do, and I'd
Mhm.
probably be like, "I'll take it," and then use it as a prize to give out to someone. I would not actually use it, or I'd give it to like be like, "Okay, Riot, the research and development lab, you now have a 3080 or a 3090." Stuff like that. Like I do take stuff occasionally, but it's like it has to be very clear, and the friendship has to be like genuine, or there's nothing like relationship based there. Like I know that there's a lot of, I'm gonna use Nvidia or Intel or whatever companies where like doing a lot of work with them, it's literally just part of their budget to be like everybody they sign a deal with this year gets something. Like they
Yeah.
just send something out, and it's like okay, well that's thing. And then I just like it's part of the deal. It's not a like a benefit, and I can justify it that way. But I think we're going to come to a point where governments and laws will be passed around streamer not behavior but streamer work, like what is going on here, what's being done. More transparency is going to be made available. But it's interesting because like the number one aspirational job that high school students right now say is they want to be a professional YouTuber,
Mhm.
not be an astronaut, not be a lawyer, not to be a doctor. It is not even close. Everybody wants to be a professional YouTuber. And that was not the case 4 years ago, 3 years ago. So seeing what happens and how this industry grows along that space is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, there's some fascinating statistics that Twitch has released. It's probably a few years old at this point, but there was something about 80% growth in new streamers on the platform, and most of them only last like a couple months or something like that.
Mhm.
I'm not quoting the exact statistics, but the general gist of it was there was an explosion of growth in new streamers, and it usually goes like a bell curve where it's like massive growth, and then they try streaming, and then they realize it's a lot of work and a lot of
Mhm.
nothing. Holy moly! Talk about that a little bit more in a second. Um, but it's really fascinating to see that very, very, very young people are looking to get into this. Like 10 years old, 9 years old, they're looking at Ninja, they're looking at Tfue or whoever the popular streamer is these days. Um, and they're seeing, like you said, it's not astronaut anymore, it's streamer. And I don't know how I feel about that. It feels like the kind of it's almost like people who grew up wanting to be a celebrity or something, where I don't it's so unattainable, and I hate saying this because like you don't want to be a dream killer, but it's so unattainable for 99.9999% of people.
Yeah.
Hard work and sacrifice and perseverance do not pay off in this realm in the level that it does in any other realm.
Yeah.
I think the easiest way to compare it is to acting and celebrity stardom.
The only reason I'm kind of okay with it is such a low cost of trying and
Mhm,
burnout and missing. It's not going to ruin your life if you fail. Like doing some other like things where it's like you have to sink tons of money and time and everything. Sure, with the content creator, but it also I feel like is going to teach a lot of people a lot of things
mhm.
that they need to learn that they might not otherwise learn. Like how do I sign a BD deal? How do I cold call? How do I cold email? How do I like present myself? How do I learn like a persona? How do I build a persona? How do I do all these different types of things?
That's
Which I think
that's
are incredibly powerful.
that's really, really interesting that you go there, because in my mind, I was focusing more on, the people who start streaming and they realize that they're gonna get no viewers,
Mm,
because it's very, very saturated, and
yeah.
then they just give up.
Oh,
But I love that
yeah.
you went to the point where they get to the point where they could consider it as like as like a source of income or a way to gain, experience and stuff. And that's an optimistic way of
And
looking at it.
well, anyone who wants to do it as a full-time job should like figure out some of that stuff anyway. Like they should
Mhm.
like before they're going in. Like the amount of what disgusts me right now is the amount of people that are being like, I'm gonna buy everything from Elgato, basically $1,000, and then I'm gonna start streaming. I'm like, cool, you could stream on your phone, you could stream on a toaster, um, uh, like everything. Like I have a nice mic, but it's still just like a budget mic. I think this was $70. But like
Mhm.
I could invest in something that's like hundreds of dollars and minimal increase from my perspective. I know other people would disagree with me.
Mhm.
And so I get terrified about that stuff. But I think that like having looking at something like this as like I'm being an entrepreneur is more it's like what they're thinking of, not just being I'm a content creator.
Yeah.
Um but because I'm worried though because I look at people like Mr. Beast, who I think is a business like genius. Like I think he's an e-commerce like wizard. Um but everybody's like, he's making so much money, he's making so much money, he's got millions in the bank, whatever. Mr. Beast doesn't have that much money. He puts almost everything back into that business. He had to borrow money earlier last year to be able to do some of his projects.
Yeah.
And it's all about the business and doing that type of stuff. And people are just like it's easy for him. He works his ass off. He lives in like the fact that he's also been able to execute that while living not in a major city is incredible. But it's also one of the reasons he's been successful because everything's cheaper. So I was
Mhm.
like, he did his like 50 car giveaway, and I mentally and took a piece of paper and like wrote down like all the cars, and I was like, how much would it cost if you did this in Los Angeles just in taxes?
Yeah.
And it was insane. Like you couldn't
Yeah.
do it. So he's in the perfect place to do those things, and I'm
So
curious to see what happens there.
that's an awesome example. Mr. Beast actually lives in Greenville, North Carolina, near
Mm,
the ECU campus, which I know because I've met him while I was in Greenville. He was running
ah.
around with his posse, and they were doing some sort of video or something. It was a lot of fun.
The only
I
reason
just
I knew that was because he had videos where people would be wearing Braves gear, and I'm like, cool, he's somewhere in the
in the
southeastern
South.
United States.
From what I know, I don't follow Mr. Beast. I'm not a fan of his content. Not that I don't like him, but I just not entertained
Yeah.
by it. But from what I can tell, I think he does business in LA. I think he does have some sort of residence over in LA, and I think he does
Mm.
some stuff over there. But I think, like you said, he does the majority of his business and content creation
His
in
studio
Greenville.
is
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah, in Greenville, North Carolina, which is for people who don't know, it's not a big town. It's basically just a college town. The price of living is through the floor compared to something like
Yeah.
Los Angeles or even the capital where I live, Raleigh.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a interesting thing to point out.
And the
Um,
like various other things like tax rates and everything else. Mm.
yeah. Um, shoot, what was I gonna? Okay, yeah. I wanted to focus on this because I didn't before we got too far away from it. Um, Content creators who are in games
Mm.
and then review those games. Uh, for an example, for two examples, I want to point out the first one would be the game Walking Simulator 19 or whatever it was. Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus, whatever it was called. Um, that game, there was so many content creator celebrities that were in that game, and then they would come out and they would do reviews, and they're like, "This is the best game ever." And there was sort of like a controversy where it came out where this game, it was a from most people's perspective, it was a good game and it was interesting and it was breaking new ground in some things, but it wasn't game of the decade. It wasn't even game of the year. It was just a new type of game, and I think that was a victim of the hype complex where everyone was. And I'm not faulting the people who are in it, because if you came to me and you said, "Hey, do you want to be in a game by your favorite developer as like a cameo?" Like, of course, anyone would jump at the chance of that.
Then you don't get to report on it.
Yeah, I don't. I think that there should have been a little bit more. There should have been a little bit more forward thinking on those people's parts, where coming from, they might be a little bit biased, but who knows. And then the one that is on everyone's minds today, Cyberpunk 2077. They have cameos by a ton of people in that game. There's like people, of course, the largest one, Keanu Reeves, and then a lot of content creators are in it as well. And all these people are like hyping this game up to ridiculous proportions, which one is terrible because it keeps getting delayed. So these poor devs are working their ass off to make this game. And they're delaying it because either A, something's wrong with it technically, or B, they're afraid that it's not going to live up to all this hype. And the problem with delaying it because it's not going to live up to all this hype is that there gets more and more it goes up. And then if it comes out and it's not meeting these ridiculous expectations that have already been set, because Code Red or Project Red is this studio who's released so many games that have been heralded as some of the greatest games of all time, that is going to do some executive whiplash. There's going to be some major backlash. If things, not saying that the game's not going to be great, I know nothing about it, but if things aren't excellent, there's going to be some problems.
I don't think it's going to be excellent.
I don't have the insight or even the research done to say anything definitively.
This is no insight. This is no insight. This is nothing like about that. Like this is more. I think this is more watching their perception of the game versus what the game is. What everybody's saying, because like we're getting to a point where we're getting to a no man's sky where people think it's everything. This is an RPG that is pretty linear. It's not this like I go everywhere all the time thing. And also the amount of people that are really hyped on this game and never played The Witcher, I'm like, ooh, The Witcher was not friendly. The Witcher was not a friendly game to get into if you didn't know RPGs a lot. It's not an easy game to get started with. So I'm very curious to see what the reaction is. I'm not saying the game's not to be good, but I think that the reaction will, like, everybody does not understand what this game is, and it's just the hype's building. But yeah, I think that every influencer that is part of this game should put ad when they play it every time, or every time they talk about it, it's an ad. There is a world where is it FTC or FCC? One of them looks at this and is like, no, I think it's FCC. The FCC looks at that and looks at this game and looks at what's going on and is just like, fines for everybody, retroactive, because this is an ad. But it's something I've got a blog sitting around thinking about doing, because like it's sketchy.
There's a quote from somebody, and I'm gonna butcher the quote. I don't even know who said it originally, but it was something about how the internet and the content creation sphere is just like a lawyer. It's prime for some lawyer to just come in and just like wreak havoc. Just because there's no regulations, everything is being broken in some standpoint. Like you said, even people putting hashtag ad in their thing when they're playing a game that they're being sponsored to play. That's a new thing. That wasn't around 2 years ago. That wasn't around even like most of last year, I don't think. That's probably wrong, but something like that. how long were people being sponsored to do this stuff and not disclosing it? And that never goes away. Like if somebody
How
wouldn't
many people are being sponsored monetarily or physically and are not talking about it
not disclosing
or
it.
not saying it's an ad? Yeah.
There was a little bit of controversy in the Twitch world a few months back, coming from charity streams where it came out, and this sort of blew over in a way that which I wasn't expecting. It came out that some of the top streamers were being sponsored non-small amounts of money, non-trivial amounts of money to host charity events, to raise money for certain things, and they weren't disclosing that they were being sponsored. Um, and that was like that blew away so quickly. I thought this was going to be a big deal, but like people were like, I got offered $30,000 to stream for so and so, and I'm like, and you didn't find the need to say that.
yeah. That one's real tough. Because that is how the charity industry has always worked, not just in gaming, but in
Mhm.
everything. Like with Tiger Woods comes and plays your charity golf tournament, you pay him $500,000, but you
Yeah,
raise $5 million, so it's net positive. So that's something people like always have done. So I don't I like that I don't have like any hot take there. Other than it should probably I don't know if it needs to be disclosed there because it's not for raise it's not making them a salary. Like say if they had subscriptions on and they were keeping all the money, or say they had donations and they were keeping all the money, then I have an issue with it. But if all the money and everything is just going straight to the charity, then I think it's fine.
yeah. It's definitely weird because I don't think people were super aware that this was like a normal thing. Like you said, like, oh yeah, this is
Mm.
just something that happens. I think most people, like when they see, oh, charity stream from so and so, they're thinking, oh, this person is doing this out of the goodness of their heart or for public relations credit, um,
Yeah,
or whatever the reason is.
yeah.
Um, and
Like
it's just
like
something that
I'm
comes from not being forthright with this sort of thing.
Yeah, like I'm in the process of setting up a foundation for scholarships for people who want to work in gaming. For less for hey, let me send you to school for a gaming degree, but more how do I go from I have a career doing like something else and I want to do something in gaming, and like looking into it and analyzing like, well, how do I raise money to do these types of scholarships and fund these things? It was like, well, one, I could just approach companies and be like, yo, give me money. I want to do this. And this is why it's good. And you can write it off for your taxes. But the real way I would be able to make money and do these types of things is to run charity events that raise money, where it's like, here's the esports golf classic. It is I'm paying for five top streamers to come, and they'll put them up in a hotel, and I'll give them golf balls and golf clubs, and then for everybody else who wants to play, it's $1,000 to play on in the thing, and then everything there goes to or $5,000 to $10,000, and then we're able to through that raise money, and all of that goes straight to scholarships. Um, so I understand the model of how that type of stuff works and how it does. Um, the question always comes back to is what is pay, because uh like a streamer being featured on press footage and advertising footage for like a charity brand, that's in kind stuff.
Yeah,
It like there's a lot of this stuff where I'm just like, what you
it's
got,
hard
what's
to
going
it's
on
hard to
here?
quantify, but it's like people kind of know, like
Yeah.
people on the inside know what's going on.
Yeah, and so you were saying like a lawyer is gonna wreak havoc, and it's true. Like we're gonna get someone who is really good at law, who has who just wants to like wreak havoc and actually force the industry to do stuff, is going to come in an ambulance chase and is going to do like cease and desist, is going to do like class actions, everything against everybody, and people are going to have to start figuring out what is okay and what's not. I think this is a similar thing that's going on with like the DMCA stuff, where
Mhm.
everybody's like, it's been working for years, why do we have to change? And it's like, because you've been breaking the rules and laws for years doesn't mean that it's okay now.
Yeah.
Like you just got big enough and made enough money that the companies care.
Yeah.
It was never okay.
Squatters' rights don't apply to
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I am of the like. There's a ton of people who are like, "Oh no, all my content's gone." And I realize how flippant and terrible that sounds. But I'm also there being like, "Hey, I worked in an ice cream store when I was 15 and 16 years old, and I knew if we played the radio rather than paying the licensing fee to this very generic music system, we would get fined thousands of dollars because we did not have a license to just play the radio.
mhm.
Um, and corporate had this paid like $10,000 or $20,000 to be a license to use all these different songs. Like malls do this, venues do this. Like it's a thing, and like every time a song is played at a concert, people know who played it, where it was played, everything. Rights things happen, everything. And the fact that everybody's just like, but I'm just playing games, and I'm like, but you use the music.
Yeah. And that's I love that this argument has been set in stone for gaming for some reason. Like everyone knows
Yeah,
that you can't watch a movie on stream. Everyone knows that you
yeah.
can't stream like
Sports,
somebody's
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. But why is gaming and to some extent music? I think music is a little more concrete that people are like, okay, yeah, this isn't okay, but I've just been getting away with it. But yeah, I don't know why. Circling way back to what we were talking about at the beginning, why is gaming like somehow exempt from that law and those rules? Is it just because they've been getting away with it for so long,
they've been
or
getting away with it so long and nobody's cared. Do I think that Twitch could be handling this better? Yes. Do I
Mhm.
think that Twitch's lawyers probably said just get rid of it all? We can't do anything. Like do it now. The longer this is up, the more liable we are. Probably. So that's
Yeah,
why it's gone.
it
Um.
it makes me think of for those of you who watch Silicon Valley, it makes me think of that scene from Silicon Valley where they built this tool and it was like collecting data from underage people, and every person that was underage that was signing thing was like another $180,000 fine or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Um, and then they sold the tool to Hooli, which is like the analog for Apple or something.
Mhm.
And it was basically a hot potato where they got fined a ton of money or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's gonna be like, and then all these people being like, my content's gone, my content like will never be there, or like download your content now. I'm like,
mhm,
sure, download your content. You're never gonna be able to use it again. I
yeah,
understand you want to keep it, but you made the call to play copyrighted music or music in general, or like on stuff like that. Like it sucks, but that's kind of that like you should know what you're doing. You should
yeah,
like I think of so many of them are just like have never had to deal with music rights. They're just like Spotify's a thing, and I can just play Spotify. And I'm like, no,
yeah.
no, yeah,
I would bet if you took 90% of people in the store who went into a store, they wouldn't realize that if it's like a real store, not like just like a mom and pop shop, they
yeah,
wouldn't realize that it's not just the radio playing, it's not just Spotify playing.
yeah.
Like there's a special thing that goes into that.
Yeah, it's this big box about this size, like this
Yeah.
deep. It has all these different inputs at it. You can turn it to like 32 different stations that are like at least for North America, and they are all rated at like they're all designed, and the playlists and the songs are licensed out, and the playlists and stuff are designed to keep shoppers happy or to have a certain mood and everything about that.
Um
Mm.
I'm gonna call out or I'm gonna rat out somebody that I worked for. I'm not gonna name any names obviously, but a store that I worked at, which wasn't a mom and pop shop, but it definitely wasn't it was a chain. They were
Mm.
using Pandora. They were just like as the
Ah,
sound system, which I don't know if they're still doing it, but yeah, I was like, are you gonna when I was like 16 or something when I worked there. I'm like, um are you gonna like get this service or pay this thing for like yeah, he's like,
yeah.
nah, don't worry about it. Nobody's ever gonna care. Which is true. Nobody's gonna come into this small shop in the middle of rural North Carolina and be like,
But if someone does come by, it can be
yeah,
5, 10, 20, 50. Like 10% of your yearly proceeds, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
People love the nobody's ever gonna bother me about it clause in law, even though it's not a
Yeah.
real clause. They're just like,
Yeah.
yeah, nobody's gonna take the effort to go and deal with this,
Yeah.
which is true
Yeah.
in most cases. It's sort of like piracy at the end of the day. Like 99.99999% of pirates are like never prosecuted or never
Yeah.
even identified. But like you kind of scare off a lot of people with that 0.0001% who gets
Exactly.
$1 billion fine and thrown in jail for 10 years or whatever. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see how this evolved. I'm not saying the RIAA is any bastion of good. Like,
mhm.
they have built a system that is super terrible. But while that system exists, everybody has to play by those rules.
Yeah, there's a difference between what is legally accurate and like what is morally accurate. And just because
Yeah.
something is legally accurate doesn't mean it's morally accurate.
Yeah.
But you still have to play by the legally
And
accurate
the
stuff.
legal.
Nobody's
Yeah.
saying that they agree that everyone should have to delete hundreds of thousands
It's
of hours of their content because
especially
they're
if you ever think you're gonna be big, because
mhm,
someone's gonna go back through and be like, "Wait, you became big because of you use this ad. We then
mhm.
own 10% of your lifetime income."
Yeah.
Like, I've seen that argument made.
There's a lot of very sneaky and very smart lawyers out there who are gonna like we said, they're gonna cause some
Yeah.
trouble over this, and it's only gonna get
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, start being a little smarter about that. All those huge content creators who are watching this podcast right now, you know who you are.
Well, it's
I
part of
see you in
that,
chat,
like,
Tyler one. No, I'm joking.
it's part of that we're branching between gaming and the normal world, as has, like, basically it, like, they're connected so more and more and more, where everybody games, everybody play like knows what gaming is. It's accepted way more as a hobby, as a lifestyle, as a type
Yeah,
of person you want to be as a gamer. Um, and watching that is means that everybody who's been working in these other industries, like, there must be money here. I need to figure out, or they're using things and they're like, they don't have the same system. Like, we're gonna continue to see it's a goal. Like, everybody's like, the industry is stable, and I'm like, no, we've only hit like an inflection point where now everybody who's built successful businesses elsewhere is gonna be like, oh, I have skills this industry doesn't have. I'm going to build that same business, but just for gaming.
yeah,
And it's going to work.
yeah. There's a reason
Like,
that Mark Cuban or whatever invested $10 million in some
yeah.
esports team. I forget even what it was, but it's gonna
Luminosity?
happen.
No, not Luminosity.
I forget. I
Complexity?
forget exactly who it was. I mean,
Complexity is the Texas one. So that's why I thought.
yeah, that's probably what it was. The story behind Echo Fox, which is a little tragic, but when Rick Fox, like his son loves League of Legends, so he's like, "Hey, I want to do a League of Legends team," and that was sort of like the PR version, but obviously there was a business version too. Like they
Yeah.
thought that this was going to be a way to make money.
Yeah.
And I obviously don't know the whole story about something whatever happened there, but there was a lot of stuff that went down on the business
Yeah.
side of Echo Fox that was showing that that we're trying to make money. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
how Rick Fox
I
was
don't
trying to
really
get.
know there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Rick Fox, though. Rick Fox, I got to meet a few times before I even worked at Riot. And he was just the nicest guy. And then I
Oh
found
yeah,
out he was
he's
part of
super nice.
esports. And I was like, oh, this is super cool.
I've
Because, like,
played League of
I
Legends with
used to.
him multiple times.
Yeah.
He's
Oh,
a great
really?
guy. Yeah, he's not a very
I
he
used
wasn't a very good player at the time, but
No, I'm sure not. But I used to. My office in Atlanta was 2 blocks from TNT Studios, where the NBA Tonight show is filmed, and between my office and the NBA Tonight office was a bar, and it was a like a food industry bar, which meant that, like, at most bars and restaurants close at like 1 a.m. or so for that area. That bar just stayed open till like 4 or 5 or whatever, because it was everybody who got off their shift at every other bar would come there to eat dinner, have drinks, etc. It also became the place where everybody from TNT would go after their broadcast, because they broadcast on the West Coast and be up
mhm.
till like, and their broadcast wouldn't end till 1 a.m. And so they'd come over. So I would constantly have like it like we would go there all the time because we worked crazy hours as well. That we would be at the bar and we'd see Shaq walk in, Charles Barkley walk in, Rick Fox walk in, etc. And it was an incredible place. I as much as I live in LA, I saw more like A-list people living in Atlanta than I have ever seen in LA. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. That's I love hearing people's stories about like where they get to meet famous people, and it's usually just like
Yeah,
random place. It's always a place like a bar or something, or like something like that. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
We knew Shaq was going to be there every two or three, every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. We knew during the NBA seasons when he'd really be there. He ended up buying. I don't know if this story is public, but he ended up buying the Krispy Kreme donuts near the TNT studio because they were never open after his broadcast, and he got so tired of not being able to get a donut that he bought it and changed the hours to 24 hours.
that's a great story. Um, shoot. Okay, we've pretty much exhausted the doc except for one last thing, which we can touch on real
Yeah.
quick. Um, the KDA music video. Hey, congrats to Riot for
Yeah.
finally getting it out. That's awesome. It's big.
Talking to my
It's
parents, they don't understand what type of company I work for.
yeah, yeah. I saw that you tweeted about that earlier today. It was about so they make music and they also do this and they do that. Are you sure it's a game company?
Yeah,
I thought that
yeah.
was really funny.
Like, and then people reminded me we do a bunch of other stuff I didn't even think about. Like we make comic books, and like we have all this other stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, we do. We have merch, etc.
Oh yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh wow, yeah, yeah.
One of the things that Larry did when he worked at Riot, he had a few hats, but he was an art outsource manager, and then he was a narrative lead outsource something. He did a lot of outsourcing stuff where he would go reach out to people in a similar vein to what you do actually, where he reach out to external resources and tap them for projects. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, he worked on a lot of the stuff like the comics and I believe well, I'm not gonna say that. I don't know what's public and what's not, but yeah, he's worked on a lot of different stuff at Riot. So there's a lot of things that this company does. It's not just Valorant, League, TFT, and Runeterra.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
it
crazy
is.
stuff they have.
It is. It's interesting because like sometimes I have to think about how we do stuff because it is truly international. Like I talk to a lot of people who work at other game studios, and I don't want to toot horn too much, but like they'll be like, "Yeah, we're releasing in North America and Europe," and I'm like, "Cool." I have to think about 19 different regions that I'm
Mhm.
doing with 32 different languages, and how am I localizing, and how am I supporting people? What are the intrinsic motivations of every single audience in those spaces? Like I've made this public before. Turkey is insanely into tournaments. Like that is a region that believes tournament play is the best way to play a video game. I think I have fireworks going on. Yeah, someone's
It's
throwing
because the
fireworks.
Dodgers
So
won
fireworks. The Dodgers a day later.
a day later.
But uh, we we're like the scale is insane, and the projects are insane. It is if you are looking for a game company that you can literally do whatever you want and like make an excuse to do something, it's Riot. Um, uh, like the budget plus creative freedom, I don't think exists anywhere else in the industry. And or like the scale, like I in Riot employees, rioters constantly fight for that to stay a thing where like the creativity, the art, it's not always about the money, it's about doing something that's awesome
Yeah,
and makes players happy. Because like my K-pop fan, not really. Do I think those music videos are awesome? Heck yeah. Have I
yeah,
watched it like 40 times today? Yeah. But like and people around the world, like it represents very much their culture, their hobbies, and it's like Riot recognizing who they are.
yeah. I think it's really cool to have um non gamers, like people who've never even played League of Legends, or some I'm sure sometimes you've ever even heard of League of Legends, can come in and enjoy this content for this game that it's literally 5 League of Legends characters, and nobody gives a crap about that if they don't care. They're like, oh, that's just really good music with a really nice music video, and they're like, oh, I stan them or whatever. I'm also not really much of a K-pop fan, but
Yeah.
I love that that's a thing. I love that
Yeah.
that can happen, and I hope that we see a lot more of that with like the show or movie or whatever it
Mhm.
is, the show that's coming out in the future.
Yeah.
Because I think that's going to be a good avenue for non gamers to come in and take a look at that.
No,
I think
there's this guy on YouTube called Screwface Gene or Jean. I don't actually know how to pronounce it. I've only read it. I've never heard him say his name. I don't think. And he does reaction videos to all of the League of Legends music stuff. And he is a professional rapper and has no idea what League of Legends is. And so, but his audience, and he popped in to do, I think he started with KDA, and now like his audience on YouTube went from like tens or 20,000s to like hundreds of thousands because people just love, because he doesn't know the characters, but he talks about like the musicality, the
yeah,
storytelling, like how he would do this if it was like one of his like songs or whatever. And like it is like like he's never played League, but he just watches these videos all the time.
yeah. Nobody in chat, I doubt, is going to get this. It's not really a reference, but this throwback. There was a YouTuber back in 2014 or 15 called Travag Games, and he had a series that was pretty popular on Reddit for a short period of time, uh, titled "My Friend Who Doesn't Play League of Legends Draws Champions." And the idea behind the show was he would describe a champion to this guy who'd never seen it before, never played it before, and he would try to like draw what he thought it was based on that description. And I thought that was awesome. Like this was back when it was sort of just like people made cool content and people did cool stuff. And I feel like we've already been going way too long, so I'm not going to get too much into this. But I
Yeah,
feel like we've seen a massive decline of that like sort of earnest content in League and just in gaming in general. And it really is a shame. And I don't really know what to attribute it to because I'm sure there's millions of different factors.
I don't
But
think it's actually gone. I have this discussion. I've had it with some redditors and like
mhm,
Reddit people, and I'm like, I don't think it's gone. I just don't think it's where you think it is. Like
yeah,
the audience you have gone, like where you're looking, is not there. Like there was the guy who famously put on Reddit, did like drawings of all of the world's matchups and stuff like that, and like the storyline. They're really cute about like having made it or whatever. And he didn't post any, or she, sorry, I don't know the gender. They did not post any of those pictures on Reddit this year. And someone was like, "Oh, where are they?" And it's like he's like they're from Southeast Asia, I believe, and so
yeah,
they're just on Facebook. So Facebook's where that content, or Facebook groups are where that content is, or it's in Discords or stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's not this massive thing. It's more of the niche communities that are bleeding over occasionally, and people getting into them.
I think you're 100% right. I think that the decline isn't in the content because I'm sure there's even more people doing it today than there was 5 years
Yeah,
ago, obviously. But I
absolutely.
think
Yeah.
I think that the discoverability of that content has gone so far down in I don't know why. Is it because Reddit just doesn't surface that anymore? Is it because people are just less willing to give that content attention? Obviously, uh, you can compare the internet to sort of like a black box algorithm that like YouTube uses to surface stuff. Like there's so many different factors that go into like what makes somebody popular. It's not just good content,
I
consistency, so and so. Like eh, it's a lot
I
of stuff.
could do an hour-long discussion on discoverability and why, like, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't, and certain
Yeah.
companies just don't care. Like, Twitch, great discoverability for, uh, what the most popular games are
Mhm.
and who the most popular people are. Terrible discoverability for anybody up and coming. Uh, YouTube, great discoverability for viral content, things that are up and coming, stuff like that. Terrible streaming discoverability, things like that. And just like they're about the philosophy and the user experience around those types of things is huge.
Yeah. I'd love to talk more about that. Maybe in a future episode. I feel like we've been
Yeah.
going on
Yeah,
uh
I gotta go.
we've been going a little too long, so we're gonna wrap things up. But thank you so much. This was such an awesome talk. I
For
love
sure.
when I can have guests on who are just a wealth of knowledge about everything. Like people who can come in
Yeah.
and talk about
Nah.
basically anything I can bring up.
I That's my thing. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, can talk about anything. Hopefully not get in trouble for it.
Fingers crossed. Nobody so
Yeah.
far. Nobody's got in trouble that I know of. Nobody's said like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I got in trouble for that." Thank you again for coming on. If you
Sure.
haven't already, follow Gene on Twitter at gchorba. I
Yep.
believe I think you told me earlier, and
And
I think
DM me, ask me questions. Like if you guys, if anybody has questions about building a business or doing stuff in the gaming industry, my DMs are always open. My email's always open. The only thing I ask is please don't do the "Can I ask a question?" Write out your full question, exactly what you're trying to get out, everything like the result, and then I can get to it because I do get hammered with a lot of those, and I legitimately just throw away the "Can I ask you a question?" stuff because it is like just ask.
yeah, it's like when you text your friend, "Hey, are you busy?" And then they're
Yes.
like, "Maybe."
Yeah,
um,
depends. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you again. This was a great talk. Hey,
Sure.
maybe in future we can have you on for another episode because I think we barely scratched the surface on things that we
Probably.
can talk
Yeah.
about. Um,
Yeah.
but if you like that, if you like things that he does, like he said, check out the Office Hours live stream on the Developer Relations Twitch stream this Friday at 12 p.m. PST,
11 a.m.
11 p.m.
PST.
PST.
11 a.m.
That
Not PM. I'm not up there. I'm
oh
not
sorry,
streaming that late.
sorry, I'm totally off. My clock changed so much when I moved back here to the East Coast. I'm from the East Coast, and it was just like
Yeah.
that shift in 3 hours was a pain. Hey, if you like the stream, follow me live on twitch.tv/Nighthawk20000. You can catch Dev Dive live. I sometimes stream other things, but most of the time it's Dev Dive. And if you can't catch us live for time reasons or you just don't like live streams, check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Nighthawk20000. I upload all the VODs there. You can catch the stream. You can catch anything like that. And if you don't like watching videos, you can always listen on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, any podcast platform. We're on there. Hopefully, we're good. Give us a follow or a thumbs up or whatever. It helps the channel a lot. And as always, thank you for coming out to the stream. Thank you for coming out to the YouTube, and thank you for listening. We really appreciate all you guys who have come around and coming back every episode. Appreciate it a lot, and you guys have an excellent day.